as Church 137, we're always glad you're here each month, first Tuesday of the month. I got that down. All right? Enough talking as a pastor, because I have to save it for Sunday. I see the food over there. I see you ready to go. Let me pray for us, and you can head over and eat, because Bruce is hungry. All right, let's pray. Father, we, as we have been already fellowshipping, just visiting with one another, it reminds us that it's so good to be in your house. And Father, this Christian Business Lunch, I love the first name of it, Christian. And Father, it's always good for us to come together as believers and in our business, but also to eat. And we thank you so much for the food that you have provided for each and every one of us. Father, I pray that it keeps us strong, that we can fight off COVID and dodge it or get over it. But Father, continue protecting our community, our businesses, as well as our churches, and have your hand upon every part of our life. Once again, Father, we just thank you for the incredible love that we experience from you every single day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We would like you to keep your mask on when you're not eating or drinking. See, I'd like our board members, could our board members stand up, please? Or raise your hand. Right here. All right, I want to introduce our newest board member. Larry Chapman just joined us this past month, and Larry's here. Happy to have him on board. Thank you, Larry. Okay, I want to also recognize aviators that are not here today, but for providing our food. They jumped in when Fry's closed down unexpectedly, and they've been helping us every month. And of course, Jonetta with all of her great work on the videography. And David over there for helping us sign-ins. We appreciate you doing that, David. You know, Anna Rosa, who has been doing the sign-ins for a long time for us, she's not going to be able to do it anymore. So we're looking for somebody that that could do that for us. So just bear with us as we try to fill that slot. It's a key one. Okay, so I want to mention that our luncheons are the second Tuesday of every month. You know, and thanks to Greg and Church 137, we're meeting here because the college is closed at least through this semester for any outside activities. So we'll be meeting here. We appreciate if you feel led to provide donations for the food. So we don't charge anything for the food, but if you feel led to do that, there are bowls on the table. You can drop it in there, or we have QR codes on the table or on our website that you could do that as well. And we have a sponsor this month, and it's Matthew 6:1-4. It's actually somebody who wants to stay anonymous. He's been with Christian Business Luncheon since the beginning, and he doesn't attend anymore. He lives out of town, but he still continues to be a sponsor, and so we appreciate that. And if anybody's interested in a sponsor, it's $150 to sponsor a luncheon. Appreciate anybody who wants to do that. Our future speakers, next month we have J.P. Lane. J.P. is going to be really interesting. J.P. was in Afghanistan. He got involved in a very serious IUD incident, lost his leg, and had 20-some surgeries. But he's recovered, and he is a great speaker. He's going to be bringing his guitar. He sings and entertains. And he's coming down from Dallas to talk to us next month. And then in April, we have Chris Alexander, and then June, Wally Ramirez. And I know both those guys, they're going to be great. So we're going to record this meeting. It'll be on our website in a week or so. Don, how are you doing? Okay, I'd like to introduce James. Just 1 second, James. And I want to tell you that I've been waiting for this for a year. Last April, I think it was, he was supposed to speak to us, and COVID happened. And the only time we've ever had to cancel a Christian Business Luncheon meeting. So we couldn't have him, and I've been waiting all this time to hear his story. He's a recognized cybersecurity expert. He's worked in the IT field for over 30 years. He's currently a distinguished technologist for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. He was formerly a computer scientist with the FBI. He worked there for 22 years. And I want to hear some of those stories. He also worked for Lockheed Martin and the U.S. Air Force. He holds a BS in computer engineering from Colorado Tech University. a master's in U.S. history from the University of New Mexico, and an MBA from the University of Phoenix. He lives in Cyprus with his wife Angela, their son Ethan, and their furry children. Now, we had a laugh about this when I saw his bio with furry children in there. I pictured kids that are really hairy. But he assured me they're all four-legged pets that they love. He also has a daughter who works for the state of Texas and lives in Austin, and a son who lives and works in Albuquerque. She must be pretty happy right now because UT is number four in the country in basketball right now. So.
Well, she actually works COVID. She works for the state public health department, so
okay.
She's been busier than you can expect for the last year.
Good. And a son who lives and works in Albuquerque. They attend St. John's Lutheran Church in Cyprus. It's my pleasure to give James Morrison.
Cool, thank you. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's interesting because when Paul and I were first talking, I think it was, I think we were Klein Wealth Management. I had done a presentation at the college about cybersecurity and online safety, and that's what I do. My job, my role in life, the way I see myself is to get out there and help people be safe. And I said, okay, so Paul, what kind of presentation is this? Do you want it to be online safety? Do you want it to be computer security? And he goes, I want you to tell me about you. And I was like, what? I don't talk about me. That's not who I've tried to be. I've tried, and it's been interesting in that sometimes the way our personalities are is I've been trying to be a servant. I saw my life as trying to be a servant to people around me and protect people. And when he said, you know, well, we want to know about you. We want to know your role, your life as a Christian, and I was like, wow, that's kind of scary. I don't talk about myself, and that's just that's just it. So I'm going to go through my story a little bit. I'll give you some stories about what I've done in my life. It's been interesting. I have sometimes tried to write a book about it because it's been a journey already. I'm 53. I've got hopefully a lot in front of me, but I'll kind of try to paint the picture. So I was born almost 54 years now. My dad was an Episcopalian minister in Michigan. My dad was big into the racial equality movements of the 60s and 70s. And so he wanted to do the March on Washington. He was a good friend of Jesse Jackson in Detroit. I was born in Michigan, so we lived in Detroit. And but at the same time, he was heavy into some of the drug culture of the 60s and the 70s. And my mom had 5 kids with him, and she tried to get him out of it, and he wouldn't, so she left. And to think about, at that point, my mom didn't have a college degree, but to walk away from all of her life, out of the parsonage, because she was kicked out of the parsonage because she was no longer married to a pastor, but say, you know what, it was more important for me to be safe and my kids to be safe. And she did that. And it was kind of interesting as I've gotten older. I think one of the things about wisdom as we get older, we recognize some of the choices our parents make and our people around us make, and you say, wow, what courage that had to be. She didn't just do that. She didn't just leave my dad. She also decided to move us to Texas. She took all 5 of us, loaded us up in an old Gulf van and a U-Haul, and moved us down to Spring Branch. And it was interesting because now, here I am, I'm 7 at this point when we moved here, and we're trying to learn Texan, right? Think about being that kid who doesn't have a Texas drawl, who doesn't have that language. And so even at that age, I had already found myself in a little bit of a weird situation, and I didn't have a lot of friends. And so what starts happening to kids when they get 7, 8, 9, 10 years old? They start getting in trouble. It's just what happens. And so we got evicted from our apartment in Spring Branch after my brother graduated from Stratford High School. And we moved into the east end of Houston. Now, I have a joke I say about the east end of Houston. I was the fastest white kid on the block. I was the only white kid on the block. Okay? It was a very rough neighborhood. We were in the 3rd Ward off of Telephone and Wayside. And even today, I drive through there now, and I'm going, wow, this was where I spent my 3rd, 4th, 5th grade year, 6th grade year, 7th grade year. and it was rough. And my brother was into drugs, and I got chased home sometimes by drug dealers that wanted my brother's money. And it was a very rough upbringing for a kid of my, and I said, what do you do with your life at that point, right? In third grade, my mom pulled us out of public school because my brother was a beautiful boy, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and he got his hair lit on fire every day by the Hispanic kids. And my mom said, we're getting you out of there, and she put us into a Catholic school. There was a little Catholic school right there on telephone, and that's where we went from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Now, being a Protestant kid in a Catholic school has some challenges because you get to sit in the back of the church and watch everybody else do the church. But it also instilled in me this love of God, this love of what it stands for. My mom rejected God because of my dad, because of him being a pastor, and the church supported him in the divorce. They had to, and that was how it worked. And so she rejected it, so we didn't do church. So I started going to church myself. And I went to a little Baptist church, and that was a little weird for me. But then I found a Methodist church, and I liked it. And I went to that Methodist church by myself, and I was confirmed by myself. No one was there with me. And that was what I did. And I'd come home. My mom got remarried to an atheist. And I came home from church, and guess what I got to do? Defend it. I had to stand there, and he would tell me what was the sermon. And he would pull out a Bible, and he'd say, okay, so what does it say here? What does it say here? And here I am, 12 years old, defending Christianity. It was interesting, but what it did raise in me was it raised in me an understanding of it's not just surface knowledge. It's not just at 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. It can't just be, well, I do it because everybody else does it. And so my stepfather continued to be this sort of early on, just kind of a thorn at times. But he taught me how to think about things and to be a free thinker and to look at it and examine and analyze. And so they moved us into a Lutheran school system. So I went to Lutheran High South. Down at that point, it was off of Woodridge and I-45. And I went there for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I graduated. And I went to Lutheran colleges for a couple years. And in each of those, I learned how to defend my beliefs because my beliefs were not Lutheran beliefs. And so people will ask me, they'll say, what are you? I'll say, like Brian would say, I'm a Christian. I'm a mutt. Like many of us in the United States, I'm a Christian mutt. I have Catholic upbringings. I have, Methodist. I have Lutheran, Episcopalian rolled in there. And then as an adult, I was rebaptized as a Baptist. And I've gone back to Catholic school and Catholic church. And I've taught myself some elements of Greek and Hebrew. And I've tried to learn and learn and learn. And that's who I am, is a person that continues to learn. But does that make us ever right? No. So I joined the military after a couple years of playing college soccer because there wasn't much of a life for playing college soccer out there, right? And I joined the military. So my first assignment in the military was the Philippines, Clark Air Base. Now, how many of you know what happened in Clark Air Base in 89, 90, and 91? Yeah. So in 1989, coup attempt. The military tried to overthrow the elected government. 90, 7.5 earthquake. And in 91, the largest volcanic eruption in the 20th century, Mount Pinatubo. I was there. Ta-da! I was married at the time. And my wife had just had a miscarriage a week before Mount Pinatubo blew. So I got her on a ship after the volcano blew. I got her on the cruiser Long Beach. She was evacuated, and I waited for my orders to evacuate. And they said, nope, you're going back. And they sent me back to Clark Air Base to reestablish communications. And I spent my, whatever birthday that was, by myself under the ash cloud of Mount Pinatubo. I, to this day, have pits in my sinus cavities from the ash, the volcanic ash, because the military didn't issue us masks. We shoveled ash off the rooftops and nobody gave us anything. And so volcanic ash, if you know, it's like lava soap, right? it actually scoured out the pits of my sinus cavities. And so I'm prone to sinusitis because of that. And I walked all over the base. And so it's interesting, what do you learn there? What do you learn about your mortality when you're watching a volcanic ash cloud over the top of you as you're shoveling ash off a building top? And for those of you that have been in the combat, and I'm not a combat veteran, and I would never claim that, I hold a great amount of respect for my friends and my family members who are combat veterans. But my veteran status there did grant me the understanding of our mortality. You don't always get to control it. You don't always get to control it. So every day we have to start recognizing that this could be it. And I became a little bit cynical, I'll be honest. And when I came back from there, I went to Colorado Springs. And a great assignment in Colorado Springs, flying satellites for the United States Air Force. And I launched a lot of satellites, including satellites we can never talk about. Spy satellites and satellites like that are very interesting. And I've seen them do things that, okay, I'm a physics guy. But I finished a degree, got out, went into Lockheed Martin for a year, hated the job, and then joined the FBI. I joined the FBI from a newspaper article. People always ask me, why'd you join the FBI? I said I needed a job. That was it. I needed a job. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico at that point, and they said they wanted somebody to come do computer work for them. I can do that. And so I did. And I became a member of their evidence response team. And I started doing crime scenes, blood patterns, crime scene sketching. And I saw brutal, brutal murders. I saw child pornography. I saw snuff films. I saw things that no person should ever see. But when we think about what our law enforcement officers do, and I was part of that, we start compartmentalizing, and that's what I did. You start opening, I got to put that here, or I can't handle that, because we can't handle some of those things we do. And so religion in that starts becoming part of my life. Because I was in Colorado Springs, and I found a great church. I found a great Baptist church. And that's where we went, and I started burying myself in my studies of the church. And I have a pretty good library of my theology, and I started really looking for deeper meaning to what we do, what we mean. So I did that, came back to Albuquerque, joined the FBI, and then found another church, and became involved, and started saying, how do we mix this? How do we start recognizing the compartmentalization of our life, but at the same time, the beliefs that we have? And I can tell you that the FBI eventually became an experience that even after I got away from crime scenes after a while, and I started doing other work because I found that to be really too heavy. It was too much. It was too much for where we were, and so I got divorced. Came back to Houston. And I came into Houston, and I was actually assigned to the cyber squads here. Now, as we were talking about it before, and I worked national security. I worked China, Iran, North Korea, protecting the United States against those attacks, and then protecting against criminal attacks. And I recognized we had a problem. The FBI protects big businesses in a way, but it doesn't do a lot for everybody else. And the small and the medium businesses were being victimized. And 70% of cybercrime hits the small businesses. And a lot of times small businesses don't have any idea what to do. So I started getting involved in the chambers of commerce. And I started, Northwest Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, business groups. And I started saying, let's talk about it. Let's start having these conversations. Let's be more secure. And that's kind of what got me in the last 3 years of my bureau time was really getting out and meeting people and saying, what can I do for you? How can I train you and teach you at something that isn't high tech, it doesn't cost money, but don't click on that, right? Don't do that. It's like with kids. It's like the kids, how many times you have to be burned, in the kitchen before you start saying, don't touch that. Don't click on that link, don't click on that attachment. And so my bureau time, I worked the Houston Astros case where the St. Louis Cardinals employees was breaking into the Houston Astros scouting database. It was a very interesting case. I hate the St. Louis Cardinals. I've been an Astros fan, since I've been here, 74. And so I go up to St. Louis, and my brother was a firefighter in St. Louis and passed away many years ago from a fire. And I used to go up there and tell them, they cheated. They stink. I have other words I'd like to say, but I wear a shirt sometimes that says, yes, the Cardinals cheated. The problem now is that the Astros got caught with their problem, and so I have to put that shirt away because they'll say, so did you. The realization is they all cheated. It's just part of the game, and they just be getting about not getting caught. And so I worked some pretty cool cases there. I worked a number of cases of people getting defrauded. We were talking about it before. I had an old high school friend contact me and say, hey, her best friend's mom had lost $125,000 to a person she met online. And I started talking to the mother, and I realized that there was no crime. The guy didn't ever threaten her. He just said he loved her. And she gave money to him. She sent him cash. And so we think about, is it ethical? No. Is it criminal? No. All right? And that's the problem sometimes, and we have to recognize is that, I get a lot of people talking to me about politics, and I'm apolitical in a lot of things I do, but there's a lot of things that people do out there that are non-ethical, but also not against the law. And the Bureau isn't going to be able to once protect us. We have to protect ourselves in some ways on that. We have to start recognizing, especially online and online security. We were talking about identity theft, and we're talking about personal data security. We in the United States don't protect our data, so we have to protect it ourselves. And we have to be smarter about what we give our data up to. And social media, we were talking about social media. I have a ton of stories. I'm trying to think how to kind of weave them into this. I've had people that, they're bad passwords, right? And the passwords that they use. What's the most common password people use? Password. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 was actually ahead of it last year. Followed by password. Followed by kids' names, pets' names. I always say that dates are a very common password. Women use their wedding date, men use divorce dates, right? It's just or when they stop paying alimony or child support. It's funny what we all remember and what we put into our mind as being important. So we understand that all those things that we use, they're exploitable, they're visible. The data that we have out there, dates of us I can do a public record search on any one of you, just from your email address, and I could pull a lot of information. Okay, so we've got to demand better. We got to do better about our security. So I got remarried last year. 2020 was a crazy year for me. I turned off the ventilator on my parents. They both caught COVID in July. We had kept them completely secure. We would take their food and we'd put it on their porch, and they would come out and get it and disinfect it. And then my dad had to get his pacemaker adjusted, and the doctor was COVID positive. And the doctor gave it to my dad, who gave it to my mom. And I was driving out there to take care of my mom when she was put in the hospital with COVID pneumonia. I'm the youngest of 5. But I was the one that had the decision because my older brothers couldn't make that decision anymore. And one brother has passed away. He was a firefighter, died 2002. And my sister passed away from breast cancer in 2011. So it fell to me. And we said, well, my mom is 84 years old. She's had a great run. And if she can't live without the oxygen, let's take the oxygen away. And I was in the room with her when she passed. And then 12 hours later, I said, let's take my dad off too. Because there was no world that I saw where they wouldn't be together. And we were blessed. I'll say this. I will say we were blessed in that he went too. And so, in life and death, the world we live in, what did I start with? This is what we know today. And I encourage all of us to know today could be your last. My brother was a firefighter. He went to a fire that night and didn't come home. He was gone. And so I had my last conversation with him a week before about golf, which was one thing we shared. And it was a great conversation. And so sometimes we don't know when it's the last. And so I want to encourage us in that way. COVID is just another thing in this world, okay? Another opportunity to sweep someone away, okay? And that's the world we live in. And it's the world of, we can get into it from a spiritual standpoint. It's a world of spiritual warfare. And the sin in the world will take us away from each other at some point in time. It's a given. So you don't know. So enjoy it. Enjoy every moment you got here, even in the middle of the COVID pandemic. I went down to Galveston last week, and I took my new wife down, and we just spent a night at the Galvez. And yeah, it's not great. It was cold, but at the same time, we tried to say, you know what a beautiful sunset, what a beautiful sunrise, okay? So I encourage all of us to remember that. Find the beauty in where you are. Find the joy in every day. Don't get hung up in it. There is so much junk out in that world that will send us into orbit. Stop. Slow down. Smell the roses. And like I said, I can say that even in the loss of my parents, I still gained a wife. I got more cats in my house, and unfortunately I have to say no to fur babies all the time because they show up at my door and want to come in. And they know it's a warm house with lots of food. But count your blessings. Take care of the ones you love. Remember to call. And don't get hung up on stupid fights. I got hung up for years with stupid fights with my sister and didn't get to say goodbye. So make the phone call. Thank you for your time. I am TexasCyberGuy.com. If you ever have someone out there that you want to have a presentation to, I work for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I am a security evangelist for them. And my job is to go out there, talk to customers, and say, here's what we can do for you from a security standpoint. But for nonprofits, for small groups here in the Houston area or anywhere in the United States, I've been doing a ton for Fidelity and the financial advisors. www.TexasCyberGuy.com. I love to do presentations. I want to talk to you. I want to have a conversation with you about how to secure your stuff. And I'd love to talk to any groups you have. Thank you for your time. All right. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. What do we got? And you can ask me anything. I'll try to answer it.
HP totally leaving California?
No. So Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's main headquarters is moving to Houston. So when they bought Aruba a couple years ago, about 5 years ago, Aruba is taking over their headquarters in San Jose and staying there. So that division will stay there. But the CEO and all of the executives are moving here. Our new building opens up in January of 22, up off of 99 and 45. And so I have an office here that I haven't seen since March 12th of last year. I don't know if they want me to get my stuff out. But no, we're bringing the full complement here. Now we just went through some big reorgs, which is kind of scary for me. So I retired last year after 22 years with the FBI, and this has been a weird year for me from that standpoint too. Is workforce reductions, layoffs, all of that. I'm like, am I gonna have a job? It's been very scary for me, but HP is, we've done some good reorgs. I think we're looking good. I'm hoping our stocks will look good here in the next whatever, because I have this thing called stock options. I have no idea what those are, but I'm figuring it out. So, any questions? Yes?
Did you bring any of your business cards?
I did not bring any for the Texas Cyber Guy. So Paul has my contact information, and I will, if you want to reach back to him, he can get you in contact with me. I got to get them printed this year because so last year this Texas Cyber Guy was kind of I do blog posts and stuff like that. It turned into a little bit of a side business by the side. Fidelity started asking me to do presentations for them and paying me for it, which was really weird. And it did more than I thought it would. So they said, let's make this more, so this year it'll be more of a professional thing, and I may even incorporate, so.
If you have a little blurb, we can put it on our website.
Okay, yep, yeah, or I can just give you my link, and then on there's my what I do, and like I do presentations, like so we were talking about online safety. I do computer safety, identity theft, scam awareness, stuff like that, ransomware avoidance, all of those kind of things. So that's just whatever we need, I can do it. So
the FBI fascinates me. I've got a couple of friends in the FBI. Can you share, without naming names, no, you can't do that,
yeah,
kind of some cases you're on, or one or two cases with some kind of the worst ones you associated with?
I'm actually, yeah, I'll tell you some cases I worked. Because there's a podcast that is ex-FBI that I want to get on, and so evidence team. We got a call that somebody had hijacked a plane, in New Mexico. We were in Albuquerque at the time. And the plane was spotted at one of our airports. So we turned out to the plane, entered the plane, and there's blood all over the plane. A lot of blood. Like whoever got shot probably didn't survive it. So we started looking, and we realized that this plane had come out of Lake Havasu, and we found that he was trying to sell the plane, and somebody had come on the plane in order to get a flight from it. That person was from Albuquerque. He was from someplace else, but his sister was from Albuquerque. So we put an APB out on his sister's car and stopped it in Las Cruces heading for the border. In the car was her and her brother. He had a gun on him. Of course, he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. This guy, I don't know. But we found in the trunk, we found evidence that of maybe a body had been back there, a little bit of blood, stuff like that. But we couldn't find the body. So we arrested him, did the whole thing. And we started searching everywhere. Now, if anybody had been to New Mexico is the 8th largest state in the union, and it has a whole lot of no space, a whole lot of nothing. In that search, we found 12 empty shallow graves that somebody had dug in preparation to put somebody into. And we GPS marked all 12 of those graves. 4 of them were full by the end of the year. The Albuquerque Police Department, when you would go out, you'd actually find these shallow graves, and they're empty, you'd mark them. And then whenever people came up missing, they'd go out to see if any of those had been filled. Welcome to Albuquerque. And so we're like, what happened? Where's the body, right? So we get a phone call 2 weeks later from a rancher up near Cuba, New Mexico, which is northwest of Albuquerque, found a body. It's the guy from the plane. And here's how bad, so we relished in dumb criminals. This dumb criminal did us a favor. He put another bullet in the body after he dumped it. So now we have a shell under the body that we found with a metal detector that matched his gun. And he went away for air piracy and murder. Interesting case. It was just really, unfortunately, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's not. There's cases that haunt you too. We got a call that there was a woman dead in the middle of a state road on the back of Sandia Peak. Back of Sandia Peak is a national forest, and this woman was half naked in the middle of the road. Found her. She's there. Her truck she had come out of, so we could figure out she had come out of a meeting. She'd met somebody. Of course, she was a mother of 3, and the husband was like, no, she hadn't met anybody, but okay, I hate to say it, but she'd come out of meeting someone in this little parking area, drunk, and she'd come around the corner too hard and dumped her van in the side of the road. That's when the story gets a little weird. For some reason, and I think she was drunk, she went across the road into a stream that was on the other side of the road, and as she came back, I think somebody ran her over in the night. It looked like she'd been run over and the person kept going, but we couldn't really tell. And that remains unsolved to this day as a hit and run, most likely for her. It was a sad story. Unfortunately, we ran into a lot of those. There's so many of those kind of stories that on the Indian reservations, there's 18 Indian reservations in New Mexico. And FBI has jurisdiction for all violent crime on all of those reservations. We ran into some really horrible cases. 9/11 occurred. We had 2 teams at that point, 16 members of our evidence response team, and they pulled 8 of us to go to Fresh Kills, New Jersey, to sift through the rubble. And I'll tell you a story about that first, and then, because it's kind of interesting. What they would do is, as they were lifting everything out of 9/11, they'd put it on a barge, and then they'd take it across to New Jersey, and then the barge would unload it onto a conveyor belt. And there were people all along the conveyor belt sifting through. There's 2 guys standing over the side in FBI jackets that aren't FBI. FBI guys are going, that's not our guys. And they're standing there, not helping anything. So we're like, agency. The CIA was in one of those towers. CIA had their building in one of the towers. Conveyor drops a load of stuff, and as you're sifting through, there's a computer. That guy comes bolting over, grabs the computer, and runs. They were looking for their computer. Their server was still somewhere in the wreckage, and they were looking for it, and they found it. That's all those two guys cared about. It's interesting when you start, you're like, okay, weirdos. Agency people have a very interesting mentality. But I didn't go to Fresh Kills. We got called out for a missing grandmother and granddaughter in Navajo country in northwest New Mexico. Turns out they were coming back from Gallup, New Mexico, back into Navajo country, and they picked up 2 hitchhikers, which are gangbangers. And those gangbangers killed them. Actually, worse than that. They raped them and then put them into a fire pit and burned them alive. The brutality of humans to humans is something that I will never, ever understand. And I saw that with the Indian crimes sometimes. That was just, we had a grandmother starve her 8-year-old grandson to death and then put him in a cooler and leave him out, on the reservation. I don't know. The poverty levels on the reservations are enormous. They're third world countries. They really, really are. And the casinos don't make it better. And I don't want to get into the sociology of it, but it creates even more of a wealth disparity between the haves and the have-nots. Because in the casinos, a lot of times the people in charge of that reservation share a very small amount of the money down to the rest of the people on the reservation. And so there's that wealth disparity creates a very sad climate. One of the reasons I left New Mexico, people say, oh, I love New Mexico, was that the awareness of that. When you get into these reservations, it's oppressive. The only time I felt it the same way was in Manila, when I was in the Philippines. And if you drive through the really poor sections of Manila, you'll see heaps of trash with everybody crawling all over the trash, trying to pull something out of it that they can either eat or whatever, because they're so poor that's where they get some of their sustenance from. And when we see that, and I have a hard time with that inside of our country because we are such a wealthy country, that we have people that are living that way in these reservations. I get it, it's part of the construct, but I saw this poverty and literally within sight of a casino that is making millions of dollars. So that's what we have to always kind of understand, is that unfortunately with some things we do, there is a backside of it. There's the, and so the casinos, I didn't frequent casinos. I'm not a gambler. I'm a very low risk taker when it gets down to life. And I found that that really turned me off to the casinos, and especially with the Indian reservations. So, positive things, we did a lot of great stuff with the FBI. A lot of finding people. I worked cases where we did find people before bad things happened. I was able to return. There's times when you can actually return something of value. We did that with the Indian reservations where people were stealing Indian artifacts and then taking them outside. I worked on some cases where we were actually able to bring those artifacts back. I worked internationally. I went over to Croatia and did cybersecurity training with the police departments over in Serbia and Croatia, and it was very interesting because they have a different viewpoint of cybercrime. So it's an interesting world that we live in, and the FBI, people put a lot of weight in us, and I will tell you, 98% of the people I worked with in the FBI were solid. They love their country, they love what they do, they are working to do it right, and the politics are not part of what they do. Where the politics came in is at headquarters. And the world we live in, and this is the same in the military. The closer you are to the flagpole, the more you are affected by the politics of that flagpole. And so they tried to get me to go back to headquarters, and I'm like, nope. There ain't no world that I go back to DC, because, and so cyber, and actually there's a whole lot of operations moving down to Huntsville, Alabama. They offered me a job in Alabama. I'm like, nope. But it's an interesting model. But the Bureau, I believe, again, in the field, strong. People are doing solid work. Headquarters has some stuff they got to go through over time, and they have to realize politics are infiltrated a lot of times. And it doesn't matter what organization it is. It's just they get wrapped up in whatever they do. So, any other questions?
Just wondered if you had a perspective on where you saw God the most in your work.
Where do you see God the most in my work? I see it in the individuals that are what they're trying to do. The people I worked with, like I worked with victim witness specialists who sat with people that had been victimized by crime and really had a lot of compassion about their job and put that person first. We really expanded our victim witness side of things. The number of people I saw that in their mind what was most important was helping someone find what had happened to them. Even when we had that lost pilot, I was talking to the family of that pilot. We wanted to find that person for their closure. The compassion that I saw overall with the Bureau especially was enormous. We were always very victim focused. We were always about, how do I solve this crime so this person doesn't do it to someone else? I saw God a lot of times in the people's heart, and the heart that they had for the job they did. I know a lot of people that walked away from a lot of money to be working for the FBI, and it wasn't about money. It was about doing a job that at the end you felt like you had done something that meant something. And I'll tell you, even in leaving the Bureau, that is something I've missed, and that's why I try to get out and talk more. I love HP, don't get me wrong, but it's about selling product. In the FBI, my job was to try to help the public of the United States. And when I was a supervisor twice in the Bureau, and both times I said, our job is to serve the people of the United States in any way possible. And if you're not keeping that focus, you're probably not in the right place. And I can tell you that I saw that heart more in the Bureau than I ever saw anything different. That was their heart, was to say, how do I help people? How do I do better and make our country better and make us less, and put some of these criminals away that are victimizing, even people that are victimizing us from outside the United States. And so I really, that was where I felt there was a really big heart for that inside the Bureau. And that's the spirit of service, the spirit of putting everybody else ahead of us. We had a shootout, for example, in Albuquerque, and in that shootout, as a bank robber, they were talking to the bank robber's girlfriend, and one of our agents was sitting there kind of talking to the girlfriend here, and the other agent was leaning up against a doorway when the guy entered the room pointing his gun at the other agent, and he saw the gun and he knocked it away, probably stopping that from happening. In the middle of that gunfight, there were 37 rounds fired. Nobody was hit in a very small, as a 20 by 15 room. But the agent grabs the girl, shields her, carries her out, using his body as a shield. And that was interesting to me, was that he put her safety ahead of his safety in getting her out of that room. And I thought that was impressive. You know, so I saw that a lot. I saw that a lot in places where people put other people first. So, all right, thank you very much for your time. And